Hello, everybody. I'm Levi Eastlick. Thank you for joining us tonight. Hopefully, everybody can see my screen and hear me okay. I've got 7 p.m. Central Time, so we're going to get this presentation rolling. This is pro tips for UAS, and we're flying for fun tonight. So, again, thank you all for joining us. We'll go through a couple slides here right away, just our normal welcome slides, but definitely got some questions already. Keep sending your questions in. If you're not familiar with our Pro Tips webinar series, we do one just about every Wednesday, and Laura does one just about every single Saturday. So you'll see some QR links at the end of the presentation. Scan those links or go to fasafety.gov, sign up, and join us every week, multiple times a week. So here's this next slide. This is the team. This is who puts all these together. We got a great group of folks at the FAA and the volunteers to pull all this together. So we definitely couldn't do without this entire team and all the effort that everybody puts together to do these webinars. So we're always looking for topic ideas. We're always looking for speakers. If you're an expert and want to give us a presentation, reach out. We'll love to talk to you. Some reminders about the conduct of these webinars. If you got questions, like I said, put them in the Q&A box. The chat, you won't have access to the chat. Don't try to raise your hand. We're not going to mute you to have conversation. That's not how these webinars they don't really function that way very well. There is no Wings credits for this specific webinar. We did have Wings credit as long as you're here watching for 50 minutes. It automatically be given at some point after the webinar. So, but like I said, no Wings credit tonight, but I still appreciate y'all jumping on and attending. If you're having issues with the audio, with the video, it could be on your end. It might be on my end. We're doing the best we can. Definitely, if you can't hear it all of a sudden, try clicking on the icon and making sure you didn't accidentally click off of it into a different window. Otherwise, leave, jump back on. Easy way to usually troubleshoot 99% of the problems. Just leave it, go back to your email, sign back up. I like showing this slide. I have two slides that are kind of drone industry trends. This is definitely at least 2 years old now, but it gives you an idea of where we were at in 2024. It's this industry, this pilot certificates are growing like crazy, and it says drone on here, and I want everyone to understand. I'm going to use interchangeably drone, UAS, unmanned aircraft, just aircraft, RC aircraft. It's all the same thing. I'm going to use those terms interchangeably because they're all talking about the same exact thing as far as the purpose of this conversation. So, um, if you're a remote pilot, you're somebody in control of these aircraft. So yeah, pretty cool numbers. I'm not going to go through them. Give you the chance to look at them. I always do this disclaimer before every one of these UAS webinars and most of the other webinars I do too. Right? When it comes to UAS and airspace in general, FAA has the sole authority to regulate airspace. That's per federal law. So I caveat that with all the local rules and all the things. We're talking about airspace. So if you have any questions about what that means or who has authority or what this rule means, there's your email address to the FAA. I don't work for the FAA. I work for the Wisconsin DOT, the Bureau of Aeronautics, um, and I'm a volunteer with the FAA. So don't take my word as FAA's word. We have some of our great team members are with the FAA, with the FAA safety team. Um, again, this is our opinions. If you want the actual legal guidance, there's your email address. So yeah, our goal here is literally just to help you all fly safe, know the rules, stay out of trouble, and have fun. That's why we're here today. So don't say, hey, that guy on the webinar said this. That don't fly in any court. So just know I'm trying to be here, help you fly safe. Hope to learn stuff from you. Um, Definitely send your questions in the Q&A box for the webinar. But if you want legal answers, don't ask me. I don't work for the FAA. So moving on. Like I said, you've got my bio, Levi Eastlick. Um, Justin Gale isn't here tonight, but he helped put together most all of these slides. So definitely couldn't do without Justin's help. He's a drone pro here in Wisconsin as well. And he actually teaches some drone classes for a university in Wisconsin. So great to have him as part of our team, helping put this all together. And like I said, the objective for tonight is to help recreational pilots fly safe. Those are the things we're going to go through right there on the slide. We're going to start with the definitions so we understand what is a recreational pilot. Literally someone that flies solely for fun. We're going to talk about this more. I'm going to talk about a lot. You're going to hear me say fun, recreational, fun. Um, Specifically for the purpose of this discussion tonight, the recreational pilot and recreational purposes is a carve out of the Part 107 federal regulations. So 107 currently is what we have to regulate UAS ops. Um, I'm sure everyone's very familiar with the proposed 108 that's out and going through the NPRM process right now. But we're talking about 107 is 99% of the UAS out there. They're flying their remote controlled aircraft that are flying. And a question came up in Congress, what happens if I just want to fly for fun? So they made this carve out, this 44809 exemption. And that's what we're focusing on tonight. So a commercial operation is everything else. Any flight that is not purely for fun. That's vague, I know. It's a gray area, I know. Um, I could be up flying for fun, see something really cool, take a picture of it. Did I just change purpose of that flight? Maybe, maybe not. So some things to think about. I know with all my aircraft that I fly truly for fun, I don't have any cameras on them. They're RC aircraft, helicopters, airplanes. I do have some quadcopters, no cameras. And if they do have cameras, I unplug them or I don't sync them to the phone. I have no way of taking a photo. I know that can be a little over the top. I really do just fly for fun because I like to fly. Of course, there are exceptions for the commercial stuff. Now, it's not just about money, it's about service, but there are exceptions for educational and research purposes. Again, that's not something that is by chance or accident. If you are an educator or an educational entity, you aren't just flying a quadcopter, taking photos and go, ah, no, I'm with the school, it's okay. That's not how it works. So, just some things to think about when we're defining, is this part 107 or part of the 44809 exemption? Tonight we're focusing on the recreational 44809 exemption. We're not diving into the 107 rules. That'll come up next year, actually. Visual line of sight, this comes up a lot, especially recreational gets kind of tricky. If I'm the remote pilot in command, it's my show. I'm the one in charge of everything. Maybe not necessarily on sticks, but I'm the one in charge. I have all the certifications. I carry responsibility. I must keep that aircraft in sight at all times. That's not with binoculars. That's not asking this dude, does he have it, or my buddy over here. I have to be able to see it. If I lose sight of it, I can ask people to help me regain that sight. But the rules are very clear. We have to keep it in visual line of sight. It's that simple. So where this gets tricky when you're flying recreationally, if I've got the FPV goggles on, now I literally can't see the drone. I'm looking at the screen. How does that work? So if you're flying FPV, you must have a visual observer that has to maintain that visual line of sight. Um, so yeah, that's how that rule is explained. Again, that is a Part 107 rule, but it's still that does apply to the 44809. The visual observer, the VO, you can't have multiple VOs spread out or on radios saying, yeah, I still got it. Yeah, I still got it. Doesn't work that way. So something to keep in mind. Um, we get lots of questions, I know, on line of sight, and you gotta be able to see the drone. It's that simple. Certifications, this kind of goes with definitions, and it's really easy. If you're flying, if you are the remote pilot in command, you must have a piece of paper that says have training and you have passed the test to do so. Recreationally, it's the trust, recreational UAS safety test. It's free. It's all online. There's lots of different providers that, mostly colleges, but easy to get. I think after I got my 107, I got the trust test as well, and it took an hour, and I had it. Make sure if you're flying recreationally that you have proof that you passed the test. Um, Whatever you want that to mean, that's what it means. But you gotta be able to show proof to anybody asking that has authorization to verify you're a legal pilot. You gotta be able to show them that, yep, I took this test. If you're flying Part 107, you have to have a 107 certificate from the FAA. Couple different ways to get the 107, but it's a hard piece of plastic. You got to renew it every other year at a minimum. So that's it. I mean, there's really no way to be flying UAS without one of those certificates. With the caveat, you could be being trained with somebody else that has one of those certificates. We're not getting into that too much because there's some nuances with that. But if you're flying by yourself, you definitely have to have one of these two certificates. Remember, back to the first definition of what is the purpose of this flight, that will dictate which certificate you need to have with you. I know I'm going fast. Bear with me, y'all, but I appreciate it. Here are the rules. There's 9 of them. There's only 9 rules for 4409. So these are the 9 rules we're going to cover in each of the following slides. I'm not going to talk about them because we're going to go into each one in depth, but I do want you to think these are the 9. What do these mean? Again, these are spelled out in the 44809. So I don't think we need to go through them too much because y'all should be able to look it up. It's pretty easy. The last one was kind of a catch-all, and as a manned aircraft pilot as well, we have a couple catch-alls in the Part 91 regulations, and this is a carve out of the Part 107 regulations, but fly safe. That is rule number 9. You gotta fly safe. We'll talk about all these. Rule number 1, fly only for fun. If you guys got nothing else out of this presentation, if you're flying recreationally, I hope you know what that means. It's not just about compensation, right? It's about the intent. I always like using the example if I am flying and I got a really cool picture of my church and I give it to the church because it's a really cool picture and they put it up on the church website. I wasn't just flying for fun. So it's not just about compensation. It's about what is the intent, the purpose, and the end result of the flight. I get this one a lot too. I guess not so much with first responders, but there's some confusion on first responders and some of the flying they do as well, where it falls under in the scope of regulation. So for this exemption, fly only for fun, nothing else. Rule number 2, CBO, community-based organization. So here's 3 of them. I actually didn't check that FAA's website today before this. There might be more listed on their website. I can guarantee there's more CBOs out there, but each of these CBOs and on any of the rest of them, they have their guidelines on their website. It's a PDF. So pick what you want, but you gotta follow the safety guidelines of a FAA established or FAA accepted CBO. So if you get ramp checked, we call it by FAA, you go, okay, what guidelines are you following? If you can't say FPV Freedom Coalition and here's the PDF with all the guidelines, I'm following all of them, we're not following rule number 2. So that's some things to think about. They're not, like I said, it's not free. These organizations are great. They have really good online presence and do a lot of really cool stuff. So you don't have to join one of the organizations by any means, but there's some really good resources. And like I said, you got to follow guidelines, which are all out there for free. Rule number 3, I talked about line of sight. You gotta keep it in sight. There's no way of getting around that. There's no reason not to. And it's really for situational awareness. If you don't know exactly where the aircraft is, which way it's going, which way it's facing, if all of a sudden you have birds coming in or helicopters show up or manned aircraft show up, you now have to find your aircraft and maneuver it out of the way safely. And it's stacking up the risks. So we gotta keep it in sight, gotta be able to see it. And then if stuff if it doesn't starts flying weird and not acting right, you're able to tell usually much faster looking at it than what the controller will show you. Of course, it depends on the aircraft. I get it, but that's the idea. You got to keep in sight. That's rule number 3. Rule 4, don't fly near other manned aircraft. Shouldn't say other manned aircraft, but the rule actually says other aircraft in general, which it should be manned aircraft, right? Because we can fly. There's no reason we can't fly a remote controlled aircraft with other remote controlled aircraft. That's something we can figure out, and depends when we start talking about the FRIAs and things like that, of course. But with this rule number 4, it's manned aircraft. Manned aircraft always have the right of way, at least for now, right? And we have a maximum altitude of 400 feet above ground level. That's not above where I'm standing with the controller. That's the aircraft itself can never go above 400 feet above wherever that ground is. That gets tricky if you're flying over river valleys or if you're up on top of any hill or cliff or anything in that aircraft. Now that the ground slopes away from you and the aircraft stays at the same altitude, that's where you got to kind of be thinking three-dimensional. Um, yeah, so the idea with that is manned aircraft kind of have a minimum altitude of 500 feet. That's not a hard floor. Don't think, hey, they can't go below 500. It just depends. Some of our missions for the state require us to go below 500 feet. Some of our aircraft have a low altitude waiver, and some of our pilots have special training to be able to do that. So don't think, hey, all aircraft got to stay below 500. That's not the case. Think of hospital heliports. I mean, airports, private airports. Unless you're really good and know where all those things are, there could be manned aircraft well below that 500 feet. So keep that in mind. Definitely don't want to go above that 400 feet with our UAS. You also got to think there's airports that are class Golf, class G airspace. We're not going to get into the airspace discussion real in depth here today, but um, yeah, there is airspace considerations with manned aircraft as well. Gotta stay away from them. Talked about the 400 AGL. That's rule number 5. So 4 was more so got to give way. 5 is the hard 400 feet uncontrolled airspace. Um, and then that's really the big thing. Now, for flying for fun, we can fly in controlled airspace, but we need authorization. So don't just think, and that's what this grid here is showing the different lance, which is the on the next slide we'll talk about it, but it's a low altitude authorization and notification capability. That's how you can get instant approval to fly in controlled airspace. Recreational pilots can use that service, and you can pick where and how you get that service. It's usually free, but um, anyway, there's some links that give you that before you fly service to kind of show you where it's controlled, where it's uncontrolled. You should be able to use one of those, as well as the FA UAS facility maps is a great resource. I'm gonna mention that a couple other times, but um, so moving on from 5 to 6, you can fly in controlled airspace with authorization. I talked about the land stuff, and there are some good apps out there. I'm not gonna endorse one or the other. They change constantly, and their names change constantly. So, uh, do if you live somewhere and you want to fly somewhere recreationally, where you're in controlled airspace, you got to get Lance. Test them all out. That's what I've done. I think I've got five apps on my phone for Lance authorization, just to see, hey, which one works good right now. So anyway, that's my thing on airspace. Know the airspace. Don't just guess. It can change too, so be checking it. I talked about the trust test. You got to take the test. It's really easy to find. Really easy to find who does them, who the administrators are. You got to keep a copy that you passed it. It doesn't expire. You don't have to renew it. It would definitely say once you get it, stay up to date on the rules. Do more webinars like these. Jump on with us once a month and stay up to date on what's changed and what's new. But yeah, trust test really easy. Registration. This can get so confusing for folks, and hopefully I'll make this really, really easy. We're talking about recreational for fun, but we're going to take a pause. And if you're flying under Part 107, everything must be registered. I'm gonna make it that easy for you. Every commercial operation that the UAS must be registered. Back to recreational, back for flying for fun. So all the registration happens on FA's drone zone. I was just jumping on there today, and it works really, really well. They've done a great job with drone zone. I really don't have any complaints with it. It's just a really well run FAA website, which you ask a lot of folks that are on various government websites, and that's not usually the case. So big kudos to FAA for killing it with the drone zone. It's $5 for recreational. It's $5. It's good for 3 years. And then that's for all of your aircraft. So I had to get rid of some they broke. I had 4 RC aircraft of various types. My one recreational registration was good for all of them because I can only fly one at a time. So, um, yeah, it's $5, good for 3 years. If your aircraft is less than 0.55 pounds or 250 grams, and it's flying in the air. I pluck it, put it on a scale, and it's under 55, 0.55, sorry. It doesn't need registration if you're flying recreationally. So, like I mentioned, 107, they all do. If you have a really, really, really tiny light aircraft, you don't need to register it if you're flying for fun. The other thing with registration is the aircraft has to be marked with that registration ID. I'll show some examples here in a couple slides, but don't don't forget that part. That part's important. The new rule, which is on our next slide, remote ID. We're going to dive into that. So this was now what, 2 years? Yeah, over 2 years old now. Um, if your if your aircraft has to be registered, which you do that through Drone Zone, right? If it has to be registered, it has to have remote ID. This can get really tricky. So with like my RC helicopter, I don't know, it's 10 years old. Um, I had to be registered to fly for fun in my backyard. I would have to have a remote ID serial number, go into Drone Zone, set it up, but now I have to buy remote ID because it didn't come with remote ID. So some of the off the shelf, especially like some of the quadcopters, they had some software updates that now all of a sudden installed remote ID. Remote ID isn't a do I have it or not? You know if you have it. The controller is going to say remote ID on or remote ID active or green light for the remote ID. The controller is going to tell you if you have remote ID. If it doesn't do that, you don't have remote ID. So then you have to get a module. Well, there's a lot of scams out there where people are selling modules that aren't on the FAA approval list and they don't count. And you can't do anything about it. So you have to make sure it's FAA approved. And then you have to go in Drone Zone and put the remote ID number into that registration number as well. So a little bit involved with remote ID. The caveat to all this is if you're flying in a FRIA, and we're going to talk about FRIAs in a couple slides, but a FRIA is a dedicated space approved by the FAA to fly with no remote ID. And there's more and more popping up all over the place. I'll show some examples and we'll talk a little bit more about FRIAs. But again, it's not one of those things you just show up and, oh yeah, I'm in a FRIA because that's private property. You got to get approval to get there. Usually one of those CBOs that we mentioned earlier is the one operating them, or it's for schools operating it. So I'm not telling you to go trespass because you want to fly for fun. There's a lot more going on with FRIAs, but you don't need remote ID if you're in a FRIA. Um, yeah, that's enough on remote ID. If that's brand new to you, good. I'm glad we could help. Um, but if it is brand new to you, you've been out there flying, we gotta get in compliance. Talk about the registration certificate, just like your training certificate, whether it's the trust or the 107. You got to have a copy of it with you that shows, hey, look, this is actually registered, shows the expiration date, and you see that UAS certificate number. Now it's kind of hard to see in the screen there. But that number, whatever yours is, that's what needs to be on the outside of the aircraft. Just gotta make sure it's there and it's easy to read. So outside of the aircraft. So if something happens, it crashes, I can walk up and say, "Oh, here's the registration number. Look it up, and oh, it belongs to so and so." That's the point. Another big takeaway I hope you all get from this, and I'm blasting through these slides, hoping to leave a lot of time for Q&A and maybe you can show some cool websites. But please be very aware of all the scams out there. Anything UAS related is going to be through a drone zone. I know I talked about Lance and the different service providers for Lance. All of those are listed on the FAA's website on Drone Zone if you want to double check that you're not being scammed. But all the registration, everything can be done through Drone Zone. So if you see any of these sites and you do a real quick online search for drone registration, the first like six will be scammers. And I'm not saying they're illegitimate. I'm not saying they are not going to give you your registration, but I'm betting it's going to cost you more than $5 for something that you'll be able to do yourself. So just keep that in mind. I mentioned the remote ID thing that kind of falls into this too. Just make sure what you're paying for is legitimate and is what you want to pay for, I guess. Talked about rule number 9, fly safe. It's that easy. Don't do anything that isn't safe. So don't cause harm to anybody. Don't endanger the national airspace system. Well, what the heck does that mean? We got some of those rules that we mentioned before, and it kind of means follow all the other rules, and you'll be able to follow number 9. And I'm going to go through some slides once we're past these 9 to kind of help you fly safe. Really focus on not causing harm and not endangering the NAS, the National Airspace System. So these are the 9 rules. We're going to dive into it a little bit more. Before we do that, we're going to talk about those FRIAs. So FAA recognized identification areas is what FRIA stands for. I know I'm really bad about using acronyms and then explaining it. I'll work on that. But on this picture, you can see here's an example of the FRIA at college here in Wisconsin, in Waukesha. The best place to find them that I found is the UAS facility maps. It's an FAA website. If you go to this link here, faa.gov/UAS is the best place to start. You go there and you can find anything else pretty easily. But you pull up the facility maps and there's a bunch of layers and you can kind of see on the left side of that picture, the GIS layer button. You can turn on just FRIAs and then they're small. I mean, we're talking an acre or two at a time sometimes, but you can zoom way in and find FRIAs. And when that facility maps first came out, there's 3, I think, in the whole state of Wisconsin, and now there's 3 within 10 minutes of my house. So I think they're still adding more. If you want to apply for free, I think they're still taking applications. Again, don't quote me on it, but that's the website right there to find out. So we talked about rule number 9 is to fly safely. So here are some tips from the collection group of drone pros that we all work with to fly safely. Don't forget about your TFRs. So that's that national airspace piece. TFRs are temporary flight restrictions. If you aren't familiar with those, okay, but get familiar because they can pop up at a moment's notice. If you don't know where to find out if there's TFRs, gotta do some research because yeah, they can pop up for a number of different reasons. But if we absolutely for any reason are not allowed to fly in a TFR. It's not saying you won't see drones in TFRs, and also not saying you can legitimately fly in a TFR. But it's not by accident. There's a whole lot of phone calls, a whole lot of hoops, a whole lot of approvals you have to do to fly in a TFR. So yeah, don't forget about TFRs. Use checklists. This is so skipped over. Some of the manufacturers are really good at providing basic checklists, but make a checklist for each of my aircraft that had different steps and procedures because they're all different, right? Different buttons, different setups. But make a checklist, use a checklist, do a good pre-flight inspection before you go flying with the controller and the aircraft to make sure all the antennas are good, the propellers are good, the batteries where you need it. It's not all squishy and getting puffed up because that's showing the battery's been damaged. So make a checklist of how you can, as well as you can, ensure that aircraft is good to go, your controller is good to go, and use it every time. Don't skip stuff on the checklist. If you're skipping stuff, it's time to make a better checklist. Weather makes such a big difference flying any aircraft, but especially these little ones. Wind is the big thing. Temperature also matters depending on what you're flying. Precipitation makes a huge difference. I don't know of any RC anything aircraft that is able to fly in like freezing rain, freezing fog without being severely damaged. So know the weather, know what it's doing. We have a requirement to keep our aircraft in line of sight. Part 107, that's 3 miles visibility is absolutely required. That's a good rule of thumb here. If you're I'm not saying the aircraft's out for 3 miles. I know I don't have anything big enough that I can see it out 3 miles. But mile and a half, I can usually still see it. But if the visibility is 3 miles or less, it's going to make it really hard to see that normal mile that I can see my aircraft. So I'm not telling you to fly it out a mile either. You got to keep a line of sight. You got to know what you're doing. The point is the weather makes a difference. Know what the weather is doing, what it's supposed to be doing, what it's forecast to do. And then with UAS especially, micro weather is huge. Um, Flying around buildings, around structures, the wind is totally different than standing out in the open. Flying over water, that creates significant downdrafts a lot of times if we're not flying very high, and it also can throw off some of our sensors if you're using the obstacle avoidance detection on a lot of these aircraft. Moving water just ruins them. Also, think about electromagnetic interference, Wi-Fi interference. Most of our signals are on Wi-Fi. So if you're flying by anything that's putting out a lot of power or any strong wireless signal, could easily interfere. So I know I said weather matters. That fits into weather, right? Those sort of factors. As does GPS. A lot of our UAS, especially like the quadcopters, use GPS outside. Do you know how to check to see if you have good GPS coverage? No, do you have enough satellites to have good GPS coverage? Have there been solar flares recently? Because that will absolutely take out the GPS coverage. I've seen it in our airplanes that we fly. Big solar storm, and we all of a sudden don't have GPS. Now that stuff can be forecast, and a lot of times they're pretty good about the forecast. But are we checking it? Is it on our checklist before we go fly to check the KP index for solar weather, if you will? Look out for interference. I just mentioned it. I'm ahead of myself. Know your system, know your aircraft before you just go bombing around. Get used to it in a safe, close, controlled environment. Maybe not inside, depends where you're flying, but know what is normal, know what the inputs are, know what all the buttons are, and then grow. So know the system, know, hey, if my controller dies, what's the aircraft gonna do? If you don't know, try to do some research, or if you got to research yourself, find out in a very controlled, safe environment. What do all my settings do? I've found that out the hard way a few times. Hey, what's this setting do? Oh, I don't want to change that setting. That didn't go good. So know your system. And common sense, always throw that in there because it's not so common. The biggest thing is slow down. Don't just go rush to do stuff. Think through, have a plan, and then have another 2 or 3 backup plans if that one doesn't go well. So that all comes from situational awareness and thinking ahead, practicing, slowing down. And yeah, that's my tips for you. So I think we covered our 9 rules under the 44809. I think we did some good um, general definitions. So here is general rules for flying UAS and kind of anywhere. Um, a lot of these have exceptions, and this is 107 or 4409, just generic good guidelines. Don't do this unless it's on purpose and you've done the paperwork to do it. I'm not saying that these are hard and fast rules. Again, they're not, but they might be. So most of these rules you can get a waiver for through Drone Zone. The waiver is specific. All these rules are specific. Just do your homework. Again, all these are in part 107. We've covered all the 44,809 rules. So don't just take my word for it. Go read the regulations. Go read what it says. And then if you have questions, we can have a more of a conversation with the FAA about it. So general rules review. Keep this in mind. Drones probably got to be registered. If it's got to be registered, it's got to have remote AD. General rule. Got to have a certificate. Can't fly it over people unless they're working with you, right? If you got a VO, you can fly over the VO because they're part of your crew and they're watching. But you can't fly over random people. Most people probably don't think of that. Or moving cars. If the car is moving, this kinetic energy thing. If there's somebody sitting in the car and it's not moving, doors, windows closed, whatever, you can legally, technically fly over them. But if the car is moving, most of the time you can't. Um, so that's the real world. That's where the aircraft is. This is where the car, this is where the people is. You'll see a lot of videos where it looks like people are flying over cars or flying over moving vehicles, flying over crowds of people. They might not be. So don't just assume they're doing it. They also might have a waiver to do that. You can get really creative with some of the camera settings and camera angles if you're flying under Part 107. But keep in mind, can't fly over people moving cars. Got to keep it in sight. It's got to stay in sight. Got to stay below 400 feet. Again, we're not going to dig into the weeds on how you can do other things, but uncontrolled 400 feet, that's a general rule of thumb. Or get your Lance to fly where you need to fly and how high you need to fly. If you're flying at night, and we're say sunset to sunrise to be technical, bright white strobe lights, not the little green or red or blue ones that come on the aircraft, bright white. And as a man pilot flying an airplane doing 140 miles an hour, we can't see those other lights at all, day or night. We just absolutely will not see them. But if you got those bright strobes on, even in the daytime, we can pick them out. So don't assume ever that a man pilot can see that remote controlled aircraft. I would say 99 times out of 100, we're never going to see it unless you got those bright strobe lights, and then we might see it during the day. So something to keep in mind there. All the rules, pretty simple. We talked about FAA and regulating the airspace. There could be a lot of rules on the ground. Where you stand, where you take off, where you land. Who knows? There could be a lot of local laws. There's the privacy thing. That's a huge concern for anybody. So definitely think about where you're flying, how it looks like. Even if you're not doing anything wrong, does it look suspicious? Just be a good neighbor is really what it comes down to. And make sure you're doing everything legally. You have all your paperwork in a row, and you a lot of people just don't know, right? And that's the case with 90 most of the things in the world. People just don't know. They assume. So if you can show that you've done your due diligence and that you're doing everything safe and you're respectful, that goes a long ways for pretty much everything we do. Um, there's the other state national wildlife areas conversation, prisons, jails, power plants, um, Coast Guard, Navy ships, all kinds of interesting things. So don't just take the FAA airspace portion of it. There are lots of other unique rules, and we cover this pretty in depth in our webinar series. So if you don't know, jump on next year when we talk about airspace, because I think Reza actually just covered that for us 2 months ago in August. So we just did that one, and if you want, you can catch it on Laura's YouTube channel because I believe she posted on there. So all this is totally foreign. You never thought of it. Jump on there and watch that webinar. And please do not call the airport for permission to fly. There might be some exceptions to this, but you will know in mountains of paperwork that you have to do that. The airports will not give you permission to fly. This is all done through Lance and Drone Zone, not the local airport manager. They won't do it. It might be good to let them know that you're flying. Depends what you're doing. just make sure you're following the rules. Thinking about your battery, I mentioned when they're going bad, don't use it, but there's, I don't know, thousands of videos about lithium batteries exploding online. So think about your batteries. Propeller, rotor awareness, hand catching can be done super easy. Just be careful, I guess. Depends on the aircraft you got and what you're doing. The maintenance of the aircraft, is it in a good condition to fly? You got stuff hanging off of it, things like that. I mentioned satellite and the payloads. Here's some good resources for you. I've said the facility maps a few times. I really recommend everyone to jump on there and just get familiar with it. It shows airspace really well. I think it might even have a TFR button. I wouldn't necessarily trust it as the sole source for TFRs, but it shows you all your pretty much anything that is UAS related, FAA airspace wise. That's the place to find it. There's some really good advisory circulars. Um, tons of resources. Your CBOs, we talked about them. They're the experts have been doing this for a long time with RC aircraft. They've been integral in this process of getting these new rules to catch up with the new technology and still allowing us to fly for fun. So definitely not saying you have to join a CBO, but at least go to their website and see how they do stuff, and it's pretty cool. And then of course you got FA drone pros like myself. If you don't know, you can go to fasafety.gov, go to the resources tab, and search for your drone pros. It's a toggle button. You just click your state, hit search, hit the button for drone pros, and you'll have a list of everyone in your state that helps the FAA out volunteering their time as a drone pro. So a lot of good resources. All right, here I mentioned our webinars. Here we have the ones that are coming up. This weekend, Laura's Coffee and Wings. She's doing understanding loss of control. So why aircraft stall? That's coming up next Wednesday. So they kind of go hand in hand. It's pretty cool. So watch Laura's Saturday morning, 9 o'clock, and then next Wednesday, right? No, 2 Wednesdays from now. We got a October off. So the 5th, November 5th is why aircraft stall. That'll be 7 o'clock. Um, After that, pro tips for pilots. We're doing aviation weather. That's always a really cool one. I love weather. So if you're interested in learning forecasts and how weather forms for aviation, we'll jump on that one. We have two options we're looking at for pro tips for mechanics at the end of the month. So we're not sure which one we're doing yet, but it'll be one of two and they'll be good. So definitely don't miss pro tips for mechanics if you're into that maintenance side. And then this is our last Pro Tips for UAS webinar for the year for 2025. So we're going to do something new next year. We're going to hold one every single month. We're doing about every other month this year. We're going to go every month next year, but we're going to change the flavor, if you will. We're going to do 1 month will be for public safety specific sort of missions. So your first responders, your law enforcement, doing the search and rescues, that kind of thing. So January 28th will be our first one in 2026, and we'll meet the LEAP, which is the Law Enforcement Assistance Program for um, really law enforcement officers. And we have one or two LEAP agents, federal agents, that are going to be leading that conversation for us, and I'm really looking forward to that. And then the rest of the year, we'll have a month that's for recreational pilots, just like this one is. We'll have one for 107 pilots. We might throw in some 108 stuff when that all gets finalized. And then we're going to have a series for heavier than 55 pounds, so your heavyweight. So our ag sprayers and uh, the big stuff. So um, yeah, looking forward to next year. We have a lot of different topics that we're going to cover, and we love for y'all to join us every single month. But if some of this doesn't apply to what you're interested in, totally understand. Jump on when it works for you. There, that's everything I just said. Uh, so if you're interested, scan the QR code, sign up. I mean, you're on here, so you've already signed up, so you should be good to go for all next year. The calendar invites. Again, if you have any questions, here's our team. And then, like I said, contact your local drone pro, or your FISDO. So I think, Laura, we are good to answer some questions.